it's okay. I'm not in any way like I hate my job. It's I guess my main complaint is that my job is boring, which is I've heard a lot of complaints about family law. Boredom is not one of them.
Well, hello and welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show, where we share the straight truth on how we have rapidly grown a family law firm from 0 to 25 attorneys doing over $15 million in revenue. And my purpose here is to document what's working and what's not working, with hopes that you can take that and you can recontextualize that for your practice and shorten your success curve. And I have a super fun guest. We're starting a series today. I have Tom Hartin with me. He's a lawyer in Long Island, and he reached out to me, Tom, I don't know, maybe like a month or so-ish ago. And yeah. I think you actually reached out to me before that and I blew you off. So I'm sorry again about that. Then you reached out again with some questions around fixed fee and family law. I took the call. You and I had a really fun conversation. Then I got to thinking, boy, that would be a great story. Tom's story would be a great story to tell. And the headline is, you are leaving a very lucrative area of the law and starting a family law firm at some point in the future. And so I reached back out to you and I asked you, hey, Tom, would you be open to telling your story to a broader audience as you start to ramp up and leave your area of the practice? I'll let you tell that part of it and go into family law. And I was so impressed with your answer. I was impressed with your ambition and your drive and your thoughtfulness as you're planning this out, because you have not only a great career, but you've got a young family with 2 young children. And so I asked you if you'd be willing to tell your story. So we're starting a series of meeting together periodically to get updates as to where you're at and create a case study, so to speak, on starting a family law firm from the absolute ground up, square one. And so here we are today. So maybe let's just let you take over from here and tell your story, maybe your origin story of where you grew up and how you got here.
Sure, yeah. So let's go way back. I grew up in Queens County, New York City. Great family, I think, and contrary to why a lot of people enter family law, they had a lot of issues in their past or issues they're facing currently. I'm happy to say that's something I never really had. I grew up to great parents. I have 3 siblings that we're all still super close. So I studied in high school. I was pretty good at math and science and just kind of naturally fell into studying engineering in college. So I went to Manhattan College in the Bronx, and 4 years later had my engineering degree. Still wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with that degree. So I went out into the workforce for about a year and kind of thought, this isn't really for me. So at that point, I thought maybe law school would be a good idea, which I think a lot of people do. And so I took the LSAT, wound up getting into, actually I only applied to 2 schools, and my thought was, if I get into one of them, I'll go. If I don't, we'll call this a loss. So luckily I applied to Fordham and Georgetown and got into Fordham like immediately. And so that's where I wound up going. Kind of went into law school knowing, or at least thinking, that I would practice patent law, right? I had the science degree, or the engineering degree, I should say. And yeah, that's, I think, a lot of people with those degrees. Patent law is a lucrative field and, not as competitive as many of the other fields with people graduating. So I graduated, wound up getting a job at a big law firm, which is like every law student's dream. And so yeah, started patent law. That was 2016, and I have been doing patent prosecution and a little bit of litigation here and there at a few different firms since I graduated.
So you started at the big law firm right out of law school in 16.
Yes, that's
so
right.
We're sitting here early 24 here, and you're going on almost 8 years of practicing.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So what is patent prosecution?
So the word prosecution is kind of confusing. It makes you seem like a prosecutor, like a courtroom lawyer. It's actually the exact opposite. I pretty much sit at a desk all day, talk to inventors at various companies, typically like big tech companies. I won't name any specifically, but the ones you'd expect, and speak to the inventors, which are typically engineers at these companies. They tell me about their inventions, right? And these are companies that are filing anywhere from 100 to many hundred patent applications a month. And my job is to draft the patent application and submit it to the Patent and Trademark Office for approval. So my job is largely typing and, studying engineering materials.
So are these, I'm a complete novice of this stuff. So are these essentially lines of code that engineers write up and that are unique and you're patenting
not so
that?
much lines of code. It's more like typically we get like a PDF or a PowerPoint presentation, and it'll describe like, hey, we identified this problem in trying to not use any client names. So it's a little hard to be generic. Whatever technical problem in some type of, let's say, cellular communications, right? There's some kind of latency or delay in these communications. We found out a way to fix it. And, here's our idea. Really on like one or two, like 1 hour phone calls with them, just to kind of pull out as much details as I can and draft a patent application, which, takes about a few days. So
what does that generally cost for one patent application to get submitted to the trademark office? I'm sure you get this question a lot, and you're going to say depends.
No, so it's kind of,
don't say depends.
I wish if the entire fee was going to me, I don't think I would be looking to move. So the attorney's fees, which I guess is what you're asking to get a patent, are typically around like $12,000.
Okay.
10 to 12,000.
Got it. Okay. And then how long does it take to get a response from the government saying you got it or you didn't get it?
Yeah, about 2 years to get a response, and then like 18 months to 2 years, and then there's usually a little bit of back and forth, and so it could take 3 to 4 years before the patent is granted.
Okay. So you're cruising along. Your career is going great, and somewhere along the way, you start thinking about family law. And so the question that everyone's going to ask is, why? That's a very hard left turn. So walk us through that.
Yeah, I think my primary reason for looking to switch is I'm a social person, and I think sitting at a computer, whatever, 8 to 10 hours a day, just cranking out patent applications. It's okay. I'm not in any way like I hate my job. It's I guess my main complaint is that my job is boring, which is I've heard a lot of complaints about family law. Boredom is not one of them. Another thing is people always say, look to your bosses, and is that the type of life you want to have in the future? And so I want to be clear, I am not in any way talking bad about my bosses. I have, people think big law, they think, these mean partners. I've never had that experience. I've always been fortunate to work for great people. But that being said, they're a partner at a big law firm is typically still working like very hard and doing pretty much the same amount of work that I'm doing at a higher level. And I know there's a common expression that making partnership at a big law firm is like winning a pie eating contest where the prize is more pie. So I don't know. It's you see, right? Just looking at some of the partners that I work for, that they're still desk bound 10 hours a day, and then on top of that, they're managing client relationships. They're managing their associates. Making sure the work is good, and it's a grind. And it's been a good 8 years, but I'm still relatively young. I'm 35. I don't know if I can see myself doing this for another 25 years.
Yeah. So you looked around and you saw the excitement and the thrill happening in family law. What led to you selecting family law as your next career move?
Yeah. So I knew when I decided that I probably wasn't going to continue, or at least wanted to explore looking at other practice areas other than patent law, kind of trying to focus away from the B2B operations, which is typical big law, right? Patent law, corporate law, I don't know, there's tons of other examples, like mergers and acquisitions, stuff like that, to more like consumer-facing law, which they call B2C law. And in that realm, you typically have your personal injury, your family law, your criminal law. I don't know, correct me if I'm missing any, but I think those are probably the big three.
Immigration, bankruptcy, personal injury, kind of the other big ones.
Those are some other examples. So criminal law, I don't know. I just knew I didn't really want to do criminal law. Personal injury law, seems cool, but there's a really high barrier to entry, and it's kind of feast or famine, right? You hear a lot of personal injury lawyers that are making millions every year, but for every one of those, there's 9 other personal injury lawyers making $60,000 a year, or even less. And so family law kind of seemed like a nice balance, and also I like the idea to an extent of litigation. I don't think I want to be the type that's in a courtroom every day, but I think family law, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is a lot more most of it is mediation focused. So there is a lot of client interaction, and there is some degree of contention, but it's not overwhelming in the sense that you're doing full scale trials in criminal law or something like that. At least not frequently.
Yeah, it's about right. Hey, you get a mix of everything. You have a lot of client contact, and you have litigation mixed in there, and you have mediation, arbitration, negotiation. You do all those things. So it's really you get a lot of broad swath of skills, so to speak. You develop. If you're good
and
at
so you mentioned client contact. I think that's probably my like primary thing that I was chasing, right? I feel very isolated, and that changed a lot with COVID. You know, my first job was actually in Philadelphia. I lived in Philly for 4 years. My first job in big law out of law school. I was kind of doing the same thing I'm doing now, sitting in front of a computer every day. But it was, at least I was in an office with people, and you know, you'd take breaks, you'd go to lunch, go to happy hour, stuff like that. You know, I think when I lost that element when COVID hit New York City in like 2020, you know, doing that same job, but now I'm just in my home office all the time. I think that kind of escalated things a little bit.
Yeah.
And the idea has been on my mind for a few years. I kind of, as you mentioned, had back-to-back kids. They're 17 months apart. So, you know, like 3 years ago, I was like, we're going to start a family. Probably not a good time to start a law practice. And then we had Avery, my daughter, who's almost 3. And then 17 months after that, we had my son, Wesley, who was born very premature. He was a very tough baby. Obviously not a good time to start a law practice. Now I have, again, almost 3 and an 18-month-old. People would say, what are you, crazy starting a law practice? And yeah, they're probably right. But I think I don't know, getting to the point, like, if you keep saying it's not a good time, it's never going to be a good time to do it.
Yeah. So now this is a big lifestyle change in some ways for you and Lauren. So I know you and I have talked through some of the pressures that you're going to be facing. So let's shed some light on that. How are you thinking about providing for your family? What's going to have to change? And what's been Lauren's reaction to this?
Yeah. So Lauren's reaction was kind of exactly what I just mentioned, what you'd expect. Like, you know, why don't you wait 2 years until the kids are in school, and then it will be easier. But you never know what 2 years from now is going to look like. So yeah, I'm done trying to predict the future. You know, her one good point is she's a stay-at-home mom, and she works like a little bit. She does like photography, and she works Fridays in an office, but you know, largely stay-at-home mom. And the big thing for me is the health insurance. So my job is health insurance for not only me, but for my wife and kids too. And yeah, income obviously is a big one also, which is kind of why I'm taking a unique approach to this. And I don't know if this is the right time to get into that, but
let's walk. So let me just set that up, because I asked you about financially, where do you have to be? And I know as a patent lawyer in Long Island, you know, you're north of 300 on an income basis. So, you know, replacing that from scratch, I mean, you're starting from square one. How do you go about doing that? So walk through kind of how you're thinking about that and where we're at today. So we're sitting here today. It's May 8th is the day we're actually shooting this. So let's start from there. How are you thinking about the future financially?
Sure. So I think you might remember when we spoke, I think one of the first questions I asked you was, you know, here's what I'm making. Am I crazy for doing what I'm doing? And I think the answer is probably yes, but hopefully in a good way, right? You have to be a little crazy to make a move like this. So what I'm doing, I think, is a little bit unique, right? I'm not just saying, all right, I'm done. I'm quitting patent law. I'm going into family law. Notice next week, and I'm gonna figure it out. So what I'm doing is I'm currently in the background right now having a website built. I'm currently working with someone else you had on your podcast. His name is Paul that's where I connected with him. His name's Paul from Honorable Marketing. And he taking a pretty unique approach to building a website and kind of helping me build a web presence now, even though I am not accepting any cases, right? So right now my website is being built, and maybe a month, 6 weeks from now, it will launch. And again, you'll see a name still pending, but Hartin Family Law, right? They will have a web presence. Hopefully they'll start popping up in your organic search results and on your Google Map Pack. But I will not be taking any clients, right? If I get a phone call, it will be, you know, thank you for calling. I'm currently full. I'm happy to recommend you to a few other people. Sorry, this is a little bit long-winded, but the point is that I'd like to get to a point where I have somewhat of a web presence where I'm like, all right, my phone, over the last 4 weeks, my phone rang, you know, every day or 3 times a week, something like that. And I felt like I could have closed one of those clients. So, you know, that's in a month, I could have closed, let's say 3 or 4 clients, and still working with you on the exact financials, but maybe that will get me to a point where, I don't know, let's say an average fee, and I'm just completely making these numbers up, it's going to be like $8,000, right? So I know if I sign 3 clients a month, that's going to get me to about $300K, which is the number that I think my family can live, the similar lifestyle that we're living now. Yeah. That's kind of how I'm playing it. We will see how it works out, hopefully. But
so you and I talked about this a little bit, and it's a super smart way to begin your firm. And it's actually really close to how we did our firm way back in 2014, where we built our site, got our traction in the maps and the organic listings and so forth. And then we had calls coming in. And so we actually gave those calls to a friendly competitor of ours and let them take those clients in so they weren't left kind of stranded. And it's important from a marketing standpoint that when that call is made and the client is probably on your site or on their phone with your site up, that they don't bounce back right away because that's going to affect your user experience. So we'll work through that when that time starts to come. The idea would be you would get your site to a certain point when you felt like there was enough traffic, phone calls, potential clients coming in. That's when you would go to your bosses and say, "Hey guys, it's been a great run. I need to take a jump." Is that what you're thinking right now?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and hoping that's like, I don't know, in my mind I have like September timeframe. Maybe October, I don't know. The website probably won't launch until June. So I'm very much putting all my eggs into 2 baskets, right? There's my web developer with Paul, who's, doing an awesome job. The site is in its very early stages right now. And then with you also with, I think one of my approaches is going to be this, fixed fee approach, which is still pretty new. And you can probably talk more about that, but still pretty new in the realm of family law, right? Not in the sense that not many people are doing it. So I think, having that pricing information also will help me to know, what the average value of a case is going to be, and, what's the time frame on that case. And here's, given the average value, how many hours should I expect to spend on that case? This way I know how many cases I can take in without being underworked or without being overworked also.
Yeah, I'm obviously a big proponent of fixed fee, and I think that was the impetus for you reaching out to me a couple months ago or a month or so ago. One of the things too, just to point out, is I made the commitment to you, is I'm not a coach. I don't coach anyone, but I do want to see family lawyers succeed. That's my heart's desire, is to help family lawyers get their practice to a certain point. So I've committed to you, Tom, to give you everything I can to help you succeed and share my resources and contacts and bad ideas and good ideas with you along the way. So I'll be sure to do everything I can to help you achieve those goals of getting to where you want to be. So the idea would be around about the fall, if the website responds in that amount of time, that you're ready to then make the cut over.
Yep.
Cool. One of the things we talked about that was a real value to our firm when we started back in 2014 is that my co-founder and I, Tony, we'd really worked hard from day one to understand what we wanted out of our practice. And so we developed a mission statement, a set of values, and ultimately a vision statement of where we wanted to take the firm. So I would encourage you, as you're in these early days, is to sit in the room where you're at and just kind of think through what you want that to look like. So a couple of ideas that have worked well for us as we've kind of drafted our mission statement is that really answers the question of why the firm exists. Like what do you exist for? In our world, our mission statement is very concise, very simple, and it's to empower family law clients. And what that has turned out to give us is that it's been a really strong filter for all of our decision making, from a hire to how our marketing looks, what the messaging is, to how we build processes within our firm. As if it doesn't empower family law clients, then we're not going to do it. So a good mission statement will give you that. And a couple things that I've found have been good qualities or characteristics to have it in any mission statement is it needs to be short. You've seen these mission statements that are like, 50 words long that no one, not even like the CEO and the president, can even like repeat back to you. Yeah. So something that's short, it excludes way more than it includes. I call it portable, meaning if you ask pretty much anyone in our firm, they'll be able to tell you what our mission statement is to empower family law clients. Also something that really emotionally connects with you. So I know you have a heart for people, you're a social creature. Some wording and verbiage that kind of touches your heart and makes that connection point with you, I think would be really, really helpful for you, especially as you're getting started here. So how does that land on you?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the early stages of putting that together. So, I think in terms of mission statement, yeah, my goal is to grow, right? I think at some point in the future, I don't know how many years away this is, but, I would like to at least partially step back from, being a family law attorney, which is crazy to say because I'm not even a family attorney yet. But my eventual goal is to, be in more of that like CEO, managing attorney role. And in terms of more like traditional mission statement, I don't have that yet, but I kind of have like the opposite of that, like what I don't want to be. So I find, and I don't know if this is true everywhere or if it's just in where I live, but when you search for family lawyers, the word aggressive pops up everywhere, right? It's like, if you need an aggressive family lawyer, call blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the kind of attorney I don't want to be, right? When you see the word aggressive, that says to me, like, let's try to destroy your opponent. Let's take everything that we can get. And obviously you want to get your client what's owed to them. But, to me, my mission statement would be like, and this applies especially if you have kids, right? Let's get through this, and it's an unfortunate time. Nobody wants to be in this situation. How can we get you out of this without spending 2 years in litigation and spending crazy amounts in legal fees, right? Let's get you out of this while you're still having a good relationship with your kids and hopefully maintaining some type of like co-parenting relationship with your ex-spouse, because I think that's really important. Having seen someone go through a divorce and see the struggles just trying to co-parent, that stuff's difficult. And so if I can help people improve that, I think that would be a big win, I think.
Yeah, if you had that wording in your marketing or in your mission statement, visions and all that, you're going to attract the kind of clients that you personally don't do well with, probably that you don't connect with, that aren't good for you and your personality. That tends to attract really malicious minded and litigious type people that are for clients, and you don't want any of that.
You're saying if I had aggressive?
Yeah, if you had like, one of those, like I saw a website one time for a lawyer had like sharks all over it, swimming in the background and stuff like that. Hire us because you're going to get a shark and all that. I'm like, yeah, you're going to get people that are going to totally connect with that. But man, they're going to be tough clients. I would not want to be serving those folks.
Yeah, and sharks run up $100,000 legal bills, which your clients don't want either.
Yeah, well, some of the lawyers like that. They'll figure out a way to pick a fight to get more fees. So there's that too. So one other thing too on the values, literally before we even launched the firm, we spent a couple days working through what we wanted our values to be as a firm. And we still have those same exact 4 values today. Now our mission statement changed after about 1.5 years. We went from a general practice down to family law. So we refined it down to empowering family law clients. But for us, our values, we worked so hard at these to find something that wasn't aspirational. We wanted to find something that was authentic to us, that really resonated with how we did everything. And we came up with a list of, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 and kept winnowing that down and said, do we really, really want this? Is this really, really us? Does this like match our personalities and the way we think about life and how we do things? And so we came up with 4 of them. And some of the best practices I've learned over the years, Tom, on developing authentic value statements is that they really need to be something that connects with us. They can't be tethered to our expectations or someone else's expectations. So, avoid what you think people want to see, because, you're not going to be authentic to those. You're not going to live those out. And they really need to be something that you see as evergreen. They're forever. And for us, we settled on 4 of them, and we ranked them even like, what's the most important value that above all else we'll stick to this one? Because sometimes there's a conflict in values, right? One value says do this, one value says do that, and which one's going to win? And so for us, we came up with 4 of them. The first one is finish with integrity. And for us, what that means is that in everything we do, we want to go run through the tape with integrity, whether it's a micro moment. A client calls and we tell our assistant, tell her we're not here. Well, that's a lie. We don't want to even like live inauthentically in that moment, to the big macro of like what it's my career. Like I want to finish my career with integrity through the end and not having looked back and not want to talk about the fact that I cheated a client once or a partner once or something like that. So finish with integrity. Our second one is lead by serving. And we feel like the most effective leaders serve first. They serve their teams, they serve their clients. Those are the ones that people want to follow. Leaders that have others' agendas first. Our third one was compete with the warrior spirit. And for Tony and I, my co-founder, we're both super aggressive and super competitive. We love to win. It's just fun. I love the journey. We both love the fight more than we love the outcomes. Just the whole process is fun, building something from scratch. So that was our third one. And then our fourth one, we knew that what we wanted to do would be seen as, innovative or maybe a little bit edgy on the border. We felt like the law profession had to change a little bit to kind of catch up with where culture was and catch up with where technology was and how folks did things. And so that fourth one was embrace and drive change. And so those four things we've stuck with to this day, and they've served us really, really well as we've navigated through a lot of growth from zero to where we are today. So I would encourage you over the next few weeks to think that through for you, like what works great for you, what's authentic to you. And it's not aspirational. It can't be aspirational. They got to be something you already live out today.
Right. Yeah. And I love that first one. I think that resonates with me. And the fourth one too, the technology. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm like hooked on the idea of fixed fee. I think were we having this podcast 2 years ago, I might've been like, fixed fee. And you've talked about this on your podcast, right? It kind of shifts the risk away from the client to the attorney, right? I'm charging X for this case. I don't know if this case is going to resolve in 6 months or in 3 years. And I think one of the drivers here is going to be how this technology improves our lives as attorneys. And I think if you're in a billable hour model, how does that work, right? So let's say in a typical case, I'm just making up numbers here again, you would have billed 50 hours, right? So technology has allowed you to bring that down to 30 hours because you can automate some of your motion drafting and stuff like that. But that directly, you got the case resolved. You got a better outcome for the client probably, but you also brought in a lot less money, right? Whereas if you're charging fixed fee, so an attorney on a billable hour model might be reluctant to adopt too much technology, right? Because they're going to say, this is going to result in me making less money. Whereas in the fixed fee model, the idea is let me leverage as much technology as I can and to get the client the best result, to allow me to maybe spend less time doing some repetitive tasks, right? And to spend more time doing things like thinking through the strategy, right? And less time on writing out, detailed briefs and stuff. Yeah. Obviously, I have a background in technology, with my engineering degree and 8 years in patent law. So that's just something that interests me completely, even outside of family law, but certainly within it as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas you'll find in family law that are open to some automation, certainly some process improvements that use technology to enable lawyers to do a little better job communicating, certainly drafting their documents and so forth. What we have found is that the darkest side of fixed fee is it doesn't incentivize the law firm to be efficient, is a counter incentive to do that. You can peel that back and you can point to other issues within fixed fee, but without that incentive, there's no reason to really improve the efficiency of a practice. Mm-hmm. And what we have found is that once we aligned with the clients want to have the case over. That's what they want. That's the main thing, though. They may not articulate that to you, but at the end of the day, they come to see you because they want to be out of pain and they're in pain. And so speed is important to them. And we want the case over because that's when we've earned our full fee at that point. So that's enabled us to then invest in technology, invest in automation, invest in outsourcing processes to get the case over with quicker. And that's enabled us to raise the effective hourly rate and at the same time improve client satisfaction and client results. So to me, it works great. I wouldn't start a firm or have a firm without it today. It's been so good. So it'd be fun to kind of work that through with you.
Yeah, I love that. And like I said, when I started this journey, I kind of started by listening to a lot of different podcasts on the business of law. Somehow stumbled on yours. I don't remember exactly how. This is probably going back over a year ago. And yeah, I've listened to most of them, but definitely upwards of 80% of them. And I don't know, the strategy behind the fixed fee it resonated with me. Which is why I reached out to you.
Very good. So, all right. So next steps. So we'll meet again, hopefully in the near future here. What are your thoughts on what you'll be doing between now and then? to move forward?
Yeah, so I think between now and the time my website is launched, I mean, I can talk about anything, but I don't know that I'd have much to say in terms of how my business is going. So hopefully that website launch will be, I don't know, best guess like early to mid-June. At that point, at least we'll have some like metrics to track. Like, hey, I got this many calls this week, or this many visits to my website, and we posted this many blogs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, the website's currently in motion. It just started like late last week, so it's not too far along. And again, that's another area where automation is just allowing the developer to build the website so much quicker.
Yeah. So I would encourage you to obviously think about that mission for what your firm is going to stand for, your values, and then I would build a financial model. Even though you don't have, it's going to be the first one is going to be wildly inaccurate. That's how models work. But I would start working on that, and I'm happy to walk that through with you and start tweaking that. But that would really, I think, be your first step. And the way I've found those to be most successful is I start with the metrics and what drives the whole business. So that would obviously be calls. You can go before that, and you can measure visitors to your website and things like that turn into calls. And how many calls turn into consults, how many consults turn into clients, and what's your average fee on those. And because that's going to drive obviously your top line, and from there, all of your financials. So I would say, let's start building that together. I'm happy to help you do that.
Awesome. What's like an example, or a typical, I should say, closing rate? Let's say for every 10 calls, let's call 6 of them, good calls, right? Let's say those other 4 calls were spam, or they were looking for a criminal lawyer, or they were looking for a family lawyer, in New Jersey, right? So let's say I get 6 calls that are looking for a divorce lawyer in my area. What's a closing rate that I should strive for?
Let me answer that a little differently, because I know what you're driving at. I'll answer the ultimate question, but let's kind of back this out. So I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they're going to work somewhere similar to this, and I could pull these together for a future podcast. But let's say our firm gets 100 calls. 30 to 40 of those are going to be for folks that we can't serve for whatever reason. They could be a marketer calling to sell us something, or they could be a DUI client calling to get a representation on a drunk driving case, or it could be something out of the scope of what we do. So let's say that boils it down to 60 good calls out of those 100 that have a family law matter. We call that a qualified potential client, meaning they just have a family matter that we can serve. Then from there, what we have found is that, economics are a big issue there. So let's say that's going to knock out another 20 of those 60, bringing that down to about 40 qualified people. And then we'll schedule a consult roughly with about 30 of those will come in to see us. Of those 30, what we have found over time is that around 25 to 32, 33% of those consults that we have never go to family court. They never file anything. They're never a party to an action. So they've had a really rough time, and they want to understand what their options are. Now, that may just be a consult, or that could lead to a strategy session where we help them kind of game plan. But ultimately, those folks never hire us for a full matter, which is great. That means that's positive for them, their family, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So of those 70% that are left over, you're asking kind of what's the higher rate of those? You can expect somewhere around 35 of those clients to actually hire you. So that's about 50% of the really qualified people would end up hiring you. 20 of those don't actually hire. They're just kicking the tires. That brings it down to 50. So it's about 25 out of 100 calls roughly will end up hiring. That's rough numbers now. Okay. I can get you more specific ones, but 50% would be a really strong close rate with those kind of metrics. I think our firm today is in that low 40s to mid 40s. So that's probably would be an expectation. So I would say 40 for you to start on really qualified people. But the definition of qualified is going to change between firm to firm, right? So those definitions are somewhat fluid based on your marketing. Like today, we do a bunch of webinars. So we'll send what we consider to be lower qualified clients to webinars so we can get more in at once. So we'll do a webinar of 4 to 5 to 6 people on it, which is a whole lot better than doing 4 to 5 to 6 consults, correct? Because they're taking up that much time. Then if we grade our leads coming in too, so we have lead grade A, B, and C. So like A is, they've got a bleeding wound that they need help right now. Like they're their spouse filed, they're thinking about filing because there's a big pressing issue. Those will get put to the top of the pack, right? Divorce cases, a lot of them will fall into that category. Non-divorce cases are like post-judgments or after the divorce, or paternity cases. Those, depending on, again, the severity, they'll get graded A or B. C are, those that already are telling us they don't have a lot of resources, so we're trying to think of ways we can serve them with just a lower level of representation or something. So they'll go to a webinar. So those are free. They can go there and do that. So what I would encourage you to do as your site starts to get traction is that all of those phone calls that just go to you, like right away, just go right to you. That way you can start to get a feel for how qualified these folks are. And if you identify them as a really strong potential client, and then refer them over to one of your friends because you're not accepting cases right now or something. Find another family lawyer that you trust that you can send cases to, and then you can keep track of every call coming in, because you're going to want to understand the success of your marketing, because that's what's driving these calls. Is that somewhat responsive to your question?
Yeah, that's super helpful. So yeah, roughly using like a 25% of the calls are going to be calls that I could potentially close. And then on the flip side of that, what's the average value of a case? And we can save that for next time. We can discuss that offline. I don't know what you think there. I'm happy to keep going if you are. Up to you.
Well, let's discuss as much of this as we can online, just so we can help other people that are thinking it through. But so in our firm, the average value of a client is right around 10 grand, 90.
Okay.
Really, it depends on the area. So we're all over Wisconsin, Illinois. So, downtown Chicago is going to be higher than Appleton, Wisconsin, for example. So, but 9,200, 9,300 is a good metric that our firm uses as the client lifetime value of that client, meaning that may not be their total first payment to us, but that could be taking into account for those who have longer cases, how those payments break out over the average client. So that's how we do it. Now, we only do divorce, paternity, and post judgments.
Yeah.
That's all we do. So we'll do a restraining order only if the parties are married or have a kid together. So we kind of restrict it just to those things. We feel like we want to be great at just a few things, not try to be, average at a bunch of things. Also, because we do fixed fee, it sure is a lot easier for us to quote the same cases over and over again than try to have completely wildly varied cases and try to accurately quote those, because we quote our fixed fees up front. So the client knows that when they come in to see us.
So you say you do divorce, obviously speaks for itself, paternity. So you don't do like general child custody?
That could fall under post judgment, meaning the parties have been married, divorced, and then they come back to court 2, 3, or 4 years later when something's going on, there's a life change or something. That would fall into a post judgment. Same thing for paternity. Paternity action has been adjudicated. Now the parties have a placement schedule and they want to come back 3 years later because now the child is of school age and they can't agree on where the child goes to school because they live in different school districts. Okay. That could be an example of a post judgment on a paternity case. Those are hard. The post judgment is the hardest to quote because the facts are so different and the timelines in courts are so different. They're not as cookie cutter and not as routine as something that's as predictable as a divorce, because there's certain hearings and certain issues that need to be solved at certain times for those types of cases, whereas post judgments could be everything from a school choice fight to, now one party's drinking and now they have to argue about that because, one party's an alcoholic and they're not willing to own that and accept it. So the other party is trying to keep the kids in a safe situation and they have to kind of prove that or convince a guardian or something like that it's in need of a change of the order.
Okay, so yes, like circling back, you asked about like projecting projecting what I need in order to say like, all right, it's time for me to leave patent law and launch my family firm. So I think the most important metrics for me to focus on are A, the closing rate, which I don't know, use 25% as a rough estimate, and B, the value of each case. And you were super generous to provide me with, so for those of you that I don't know, he has this list of like, I don't even know how many factors there are, a lot that you use to, quote, right? And some of those might be how many kids there are in the marriage, how much property do you own, are there retirement accounts, stuff like that. So yeah, I need to definitely dig deeper into that and get some like specific numbers, because without that, and even on top of the specific numbers, like the amount of hours that's typically spent on a case like that, I don't know if you have data, right? So let's say there's a divorce case with, 2 retirement accounts, 1 house, 1 car, and 2 kids, you would kind of add all those factors and say, all right, this is how much the lifetime a client is going to bring in over the lifetime. And yeah, you would quote that upfront. I don't know if they generally pay upfront or if they have some type of payment plan. But yeah, it's kind of pretty difficult, if not impossible, to start a firm as fixed fee without that type of information, which is why, yeah, having the input from you is game changing for me.
Yeah, let's save that for another conversation, because what I think would be really good is if I brought one of my attorneys onto this podcast as well, and they could talk you through how they do quoting around those things.
Okay.
They would be in the best position to help you kind of think through issue spotting and how to like spot issues on that list I gave you, because each of those enhance the value or decrease the value, right? They raise it or lower depending on what's involved there. So I haven't quoted a client in quite a few years, so this is a rusty area for me.
Yeah.
But I think they have general ranges of time for each of those, and they transferred that they converted that over to a dollar amount. So like, for example, if a party has a drug issue, they've been arrested for something to do with substance abuse in the prior year, that's going to be a big issue in the case, especially if placement and custody is at dispute, like they're fighting over it. So that could be a ton of work, whereas, other issues are very quick and easy to resolve, right? So happy to walk that through with you. Yeah,
awesome. I think my last question, at least for this podcast, if you were to bring another associate on, and this is such a basic question, but where do family law attorneys get like forms for things, right? So if I need to, I don't know, I'm struggling to pull an example out of thin air, but file a motion on something, is that something I'd find on Westlaw? Is that going to be on my county's website? Is that something you, for each case, kind of develop in-house and then use that template going forward? Like what's kind of the best?
Yeah, there's 2 primary sources for this. One would be to go to your county website. Your state bar may have a website for forms on there, but those are going to be not very user friendly. You're probably going to pull those down, put those into a PDF, and then transfer them from there, use software and convert all those over to Microsoft Word or something like that. That's the first source. The second source would be other law firms. So like if you go to our site for our 2 states, Wisconsin, Illinois, you can pull tons of forms off there that we basically put our forms up for folks that are pro se typically to do their own forms. So that's another source of those. And then your third would be to go to another, make friends with other family lawyers and just ask them if you can use their forms.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. So there's no like, so let's say Nassau County, New York. There's no like Westlaw or Lexis or some other similar program that just has forms like that I can use to, and yeah, we can get into this in another episode.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never looked for them. I'm sure there's a place you can go buy forms if you're pro se, one of those services, but I've never done that because we've never really needed to. All right, we're back here. We had a little technical difficulties there. So Tom, let's go ahead and wrap it up here, and we'll meet again in a few weeks. Thanks for sharing with us your vision of where you're wanting to go and leaving your current practice, start a family law firm.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. You've been super helpful in all the information you've provided, and this podcast is going to be an awesome part of my journey. The goal of this is to have other people eventually look at this and say, hey, look where he got in 2 years. But I think it'll even be cool for me to look back and be like, hey, look where I was 2 years ago, hopefully, and look where I am now. So
yeah, it should be a lot of fun for both of us.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.